Yay.
Yay.
Okay, now I'm going to be streaming to Facebook. If it lets me. Hi, everyone. We are waiting just a few seconds or a few moments because I'm having trouble streaming to Facebook right now, actually. It's now telling me I can't. Oh, no, I think it is. Okay. All right. I will go ahead and share my screen. All right. Welcome everyone to our brown bag. I know I was absent at our last brown bag. Sorry about that. I'm back, everyone. It's my comeback. We are talking about managing mental health with diabetes in honor of May being Mental Health Awareness Month. And we'll proceed. Most of you, I'm sure, know DPAC, but if this is your first time, DPAC is a patient-led organization that advocates for patient-first policies. We train people in the diabetes community on how to be advocates for themselves, as well as talking to legislators about the diabetes community and what our needs are. And we try to make advocating and talking to legislators less intimidating. And if you've been following our social media, you've seen that we were on the Hill last week talking to legislators about our legislative priorities. And we had a great time and think that it was really productive. And those are our social handles down there if you haven't followed us. The fourth one is actually also LinkedIn, but feel free to find that on your own. These are our two featured speakers for today. Both my friends. Joshan has lived with type 1 diabetes since 2018 and type 2 since 2016. He's been working as a software engineer from 2020 to 2023, but recently went back to school at Loyola University of Maryland to pursue a career as a licensed clinical professional counselor specializing in diabetes. He became involved with DPAC in 2022 and is looking forward to many more years of working with the group. And he's done a lot of work for us, like advocating, testifying in Maryland. So we're really grateful for that. Tiara, also my friend, is a nutritionist, diabetes advocate, public speaker, and aspiring diabetes care and education specialist. Tiara was misdiagnosed with type 2 diabetes in 2017 and re-diagnosed with LADA diabetes in 2020. She's passionate about cooking with fresh ingredients, body positivity, and advocating for women of color within the health and wellness space. Professionally, Tiara has worked in advocacy for people with type 2 diabetes to ensure that they can find practical resources to live healthy, amazing lives without shame or facing stigma, and as well as find a community with others with the disease. Let me stop now. Last year, we had two mental health professionals talk about patients they've seen and what they've witnessed in the chronic disease community regarding mental health. And this year, we want to put the spotlight more on people with diabetes themselves and their lived experience when it comes to managing mental health. So thank you both so much for joining us today. And I can just get right into it with our questions. So first question, both Joshan and Tiara, you're both seasoned diabetes advocates, but you were both diagnosed less than 10 years ago. Can you remember the impact of your diagnosis? And is that something that's changed over the years as you go about everyday life?
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to start.
Yeah.
It made me have to think about my health a lot more all the time. Before, I just existed in this world and I did my day-to-day life. But now to do that, I have to constantly be thinking about, okay, what's my blood sugar at? How much insulin do I have on board? If I'm going to eat that, how much more do I take? Have I been walking too much today? Have I been, stressed? Am I studying too much? These are all things that you have to keep in mind. And at first, it's definitely very, very overwhelming. But as time goes on, it becomes more and more manageable, but it's still a big, big mental burden.
Yeah. I think for me, I remember the impact of my diagnosis and having that be a bit of a shock because I was already doing so much to prevent or try to prevent being diagnosed with diabetes. But I think over the years, as I've learned more about just like how there's no perfect day with diabetes, that there are a lot of ups and downs, it's made um diabetes less overwhelming because I'm not striving for perfection nowadays. It's more about like what can I do that day and if I can do my best. But I will also say that diabetes takes up a lot of mental space for me too, especially like if I'm at work and I'm wondering like what if my pump beeps too much, or if I go low, is someone going to be able to take care of me and know what to do? So there's still a lot of like mental gymnastics I have to do in my own head, trying to manage this. But I think over the years, it's become less overwhelming overall.
Yeah,
One
I
one
think,
thing I want to add to that, I forget what you said exactly, Tara, that reminded me of this, but I think that when I was first diagnosed, I saw it as a big personal failing, and so that took
Mhm.
a huge hit on my mental health. I think you're saying how you're trying to prevent yourself from being diagnosed for the longest time,
Yep.
and so at first, even when I was diagnosed with type 1, I thought, "I did this to myself. I should be mad at myself. I should be sad. There is no way out of this."
Yep.
But as you learn more about the disease, you realize, no, you're not. You're not the one that necessarily caused it. A lot of it's due to genetics, and I think you also become a lot better at giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
Um, I think so. Just an example. I think it's okay if it does take a big toll on you. It's okay that it does that, and you should be willing to forgive yourself that you can't handle it. I was elected to be a member of the student government, and when I was diagnosed, and I resigned 2 weeks into the school year when I got diagnosed, and that was okay because I needed to take time for myself and give myself the grace to, recover from the traumatic event.
Yeah, I mean, it's a life-changing chronic illness. I mean, there's so much. I mean, I think there's so much that we're taught about how diabetes impacts our life expectancy overall, and some of the comorbidities or complications that we're at risk for, especially later in life. And especially when you're really young and you get that diagnosis, it's hard to not feel overwhelmed at that moment, or think about like if there was something that you could have done. But likely, no, there's nothing that you could have done, but you should allow yourself to feel that, and it's okay um to try to go through all of the motions of realizing that your life has changed for forever. But also after you kind of process that, and hopefully people have people they can talk to, especially like a therapist, if they can open up to about it, then they can find the support to try to take it day by day. And I think in the beginning you really have to do that for yourself.
Definitely.
yeah, I think both of you also have a unique experience in that you were both diagnosed, whether correctly or incorrectly, with type 2 first. And I think that type 2 has, as we know, such a stronger stigma, like a societal stigma of blame and guilt. And I'm sure that's played into your diabetes management as well. You guys are talking a little bit about the trauma of being diagnosed. And that's just a perfect segue into my next question. We know that receiving a medical diagnosis is a traumatic event, and there's always grief involved in these things. For example, grieving the life that you thought you were going to have, or the one that you felt that you were expecting, you were thinking about your whole life. How have you managed these feelings, and how have you sought support for your mental health in this regard?
I think um at that time, I thought I would have been in this perfectly healthy place because as I mentioned, like I was doing so much already, like not just to prevent diabetes, but the things that come with it. So for me at the time, it was like heart disease, just because of like the prevalence of it for people who look like me, and diabetes just increases that risk. So I thought I would be this super healthy person talking about like how you can use like diet and exercise to prevent all of these things. And I think diabetes really turned that upside on its head. I don't think, now looking back on it, I don't know if I grieve that life or life I thought I had for too long. And I think part of that's because like I saw my diabetes diagnosis as a way to try to inspire other people, like to say, okay, I have this diabetes, I have this diagnosis. I know that health and I'm sorry, diet and exercise is still a big part of it. So maybe I can turn this diagnosis into something that's a bit more purposeful. So I think, just finding, okay, what lessons can this teach me and how can I turn this into almost an act of service to help other people is something that really kept me from, I think, grieving, how my life has changed and what I won't be able to, I guess, do or have or experience.
Yeah, I mean, Joshan, you're a therapist, so you can verify this, but or you're
I'm not a
not.
therapist yet. I'm not a therapist yet.
You're not yet,
Studying
but
to be one.
this is I believe this is one of the, like, I know there are like types of defense mechanisms, and some of them are like productive, and some of them are like
Yeah,
more
yeah.
like detrimental to your health. And that's, I think that's I forgot what it's called, but that's one of them. We're turning it into something that could potentially be a help for other people. Is like it's technically still a defense mechanism the way that, like rejection is, but it's one that is helpful for your mental health and creates more positive impacts as opposed to
Right,
compounding
right.
stress.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what really that's probably why it's super important to seek out a professional mental health expert. I think at any time, but
Yeah.
especially after a diagnosis like this, because it's really easy to fall into those habits or into a spiral rather of uh, dealing with it in non-productive ways. But I think that a mental health professional can help you in your grief journey to channel that energy into a more positive area. Be it advocacy or just trying to find meaning in the diagnosis in general. And I think that's a really important reason why you should have a really good support team,
Yeah.
so you can, talk your thoughts out. It doesn't have to be just a therapist. I think also family and friends can serve as a great ear for you as well to help you channel those feelings in a more productive way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like, and especially in that beginning time, finding those people who are safe for you. And that can be almost anyone in your circle, but finding that person who will listen and I think for people on the other side, sometimes just being a really good listener can go a long way because we don't always necessarily need the problem to be fixed. Sometimes we just need someone to hear us out. So being that sounding board for someone can help a lot, but also completely agree that if you need more support, then talking to like a therapist can go a long way because then you start to realize like the other ways that diabetes starts impacting other areas of your life too, or on the reverse too, like you could be going through something else in your life and then diabetes kind of just takes a back seat, or you feel a little too burnt out to really take care of yourself.
Yeah. And we know that people with diabetes are up to 3 times more likely to suffer from depression than those who aren't pancreatically challenged. But most people in their lifetime do experience depression and or anxiety at some point. Well, whether it could be short term during a hard time or may need to be addressed more regularly. But in your guys' experience, how do chronic conditions like diabetes compound the effects of depression or anxiety on someone's well-being?
Joshan,
Sure, you're very much
okay.
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think that.
okay,
Oh,
go ahead,
You go
Joshan.
ahead. Okay, sure. I think that a big part of it is that you can never, that it'll never go back to normal. For a lot of illnesses, mental health included, you can tell yourself, I can get through this at some point and it will get better at some point. Unfortunately, with a chronic illness, this is it. You have it for the rest of your life. Your control of it might get better. You might end up taking less mental energy to take care of it over time, but it'll always be there. And unfortunately, part of the side effects of hypoglycemia is, increased anxiety. And, you can end up having some trauma responses to having frequent lows. For the longest time, hearing a buzzing sound that was even just tangentially similar to my CGM would get me really, really anxious. It would get me to um, not be able to hang out with. I'm remembering a particular friend that had a device for Pokemon Go, and it just made a buzzing sound whenever they caught a Pokemon. And I couldn't be with that friend for a long time afterwards because that sound was just so triggering. And so
Yes.
there's lots of small things that are just constant reminders for the illness. And that's something that I think that a chronic illness just makes it a lot harder to deal
Yeah.
with things like depression and anxiety.
Yeah. 100%. And I would just speak from like very recent experience for me. I mean, like, I was going through some stuff recently and, for like a month or two, I wasn't wearing any devices, because I just could not handle the extra burden of having to check my glucose numbers, knowing that they will be high, right? Like, because diabetes is still it's a part of your life, but it's still just a part. Like you have so many other things that may take priority, and when your mental well-being isn't where it is, and like I said, for myself, the things that I was experiencing, diabetes managing my diabetes just made me feel like I wasn't doing well enough in my own life. Because when you're going through depression or anxiety, there's a part of you that feels like a bit of a failure, like you're not doing everything like you should, or you're not living up to your own potential. And when you're unable to really manage your diabetes the way that you want or the way that you feel like you should, and that I think it's that word should that's really a trigger for me. Um, you do feel like it's just one more reminder that you're not taking care of yourself. And it kind of sends you back into this feedback loop of, oh man, okay, I should check my blood sugar, but my blood sugar is high. And, but my blood sugar is high because I ate this one thing and I didn't go exercise. And because I didn't exercise, my blood sugar is high. I feel too tired to do things. I feel really sluggish. And it's just a cycle that can be hard to break out of. And I think with diabetes, you have to be so mindful of it. But when you don't have that mental capacity, it's just it can exacerbate some problems. Um, and I think,
It's
go ahead, Joshan.
it's like getting a report card
Yeah,
all the day, throughout the day, every single day of the week for the rest of your life. And
yeah.
that can get really, really tiring.
And I mean, I would see like my time in range and like, well, not great. I won't give like percentages, but y'all can imagine. Um, and I would feel bad about myself. I would say like, I have these devices, and that's another thing too. Like, I feel so privileged to be able to say I have a CGM and a pump and all these devices, and then my blood sugar is not where it needs to be on a consistent basis. So it's just all of this guilt and all of this shame that comes from, not being able to handle your mental well-being, and then diabetes kind of just compounds all of that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a big topic that I think it really comes into light in the context of DPAC and advocacy too, because we fight so hard for accessible diabetes care and for people to get equal care and access to these devices and to insulin and everything. And then, on the flip side, it can make people who have access to that be like, oh, well, I'm one of the privileged ones. Like, I better really use this and like really make sure that my blood sugar is perfect. But like, that's not the purpose of the devices, is to create perfection. It's just to help you manage, and everyone's
Right.
everyone's level of management is different. Everyone's targets are different, and everyone's
Right.
body's different. So, um, that's a really important point to bring out.
Yeah.
Um, we know that oh, sorry. What are the things that people with diabetes are responsible for on your own, either manually or through technology, that the average person doesn't think twice or frankly even once about?
Being prepared for lows. I mean, I had an experience recently where I was out with someone, and I felt the shakes. I felt a little sweaty, and I was like, "Oh, okay, what's going on?" And I was like, "Oh man, I'm going low," and I didn't know when we were gonna get food next. And I was like, "I'm pretty sure I packed Welch's in my bag this morning," and I was like, okay, let me just go dig through my bag and find them. And I swear to God, it took me like 10 minutes and I was freaking out. And the person was like, "Are you okay? Are you all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay." They're like, "Do you need food?" I'm like, "I think so." But that's something that regular sorry, not regular people, but like people who don't understand this experience, um, they don't think about like having to have like low snacks, or if you're traveling, like I'm gonna be doing some traveling later today, like having to probably take like your pump off before going through TSA, or telling the TSA person, "Hey, I need you to hold this," and or whatever, or making sure that people don't flag your diabetes supplies going through TSA. I think that something else that people may not really consider is that if you're someone that's on injections, and if you're out like at a restaurant, and you want to take your insulin before meals, like sometimes you feel a little nervous taking an injection out in public, and some people do get up and go to the bathroom. I don't think people should have to do that, but some people feel that way because they don't want to get maybe strange looks from others about, "What are you doing in this restaurant?" And like injecting yourself, and what are you doing that with? So there's just, a lot that people without diabetes may not have to have to really consider, but it's a very real part of our normal lives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys also
You have to become
started
a
out.
lot more comfortable. Oh, go ahead, Amanda.
Oh, I was just saying, you guys started out this conversation talking about the mental space that diabetes takes up, and that's definitely a huge part of the invisible part of this condition. Continue, Joshan.
Yeah. You have to become a lot more comfortable with your own blood. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
something that I was not, able to handle at first, but you just have to. You also have to like keep track of where you've put devices at different times,
Mhm.
and constantly be rotating into different parts of your body, because you can't be putting on, your continuous glucose monitor in the same place every week. You have to, alternate arm. I don't know why that thumbs up showed up. Sorry about that. Yeah. You have to put it, switch arms, but then even when you come back to this arm, you have to do it in a different place than you did exactly before.
Yeah.
Your pump has to keep on moving around your stomach. If you're injecting, if it's constantly moving to your legs, your arms, your stomach, but all always in different places so they can heal in those areas. It's a lot to remember. And then I think also, just having to explain diabetes to so many
Mhm.
people is a big part that I didn't think I would have to do as a diabetic, because unfortunately diabetes runs in my family, so I was already baseline familiar with it.
Right.
But I would say the vast majority of the public has no idea about like what a low is or what a high is, and there's a lot of stereotypes and things like that. And so you have to constantly be educating people and explain like, no, but I need this juice right now for this reason. I'm not, just uh, not wanting to hang out with the group. I need to take care of a medical issue, things like that. So yeah,
There's something else that I just thought about too, and it's actually like living alone if you're an adult with diabetes, and making sure that someone is like if you feel comfortable having someone connected to you, like your Dexcom or something, so that way like if you go low, especially if you have a severe low, that someone is looking out for you and knows what to do in the case of an emergency. Like I didn't really think about that until I started having lows a little bit more frequently, and then I realized like, oh, I don't, and I have a dog, but she's not diabetes alert dog. I've gone low plenty of times, and she just like licks me in the face and goes back to sleep. But like, I would have to rely on like other people to check in on me if I am low, and it's just another thing to think about. And again, it's like these little tiny things that add up, and when it comes to like the mental burden of living with this.
Yeah.
but I want to say that it's really amazing to have those people in your life that do
Mhm.
get those alerts, and
Yep.
it's a mental burden on them too.
Yep.
For me, my girlfriend, and my mom both get alerts if I have a dangerous low, and so they're constantly, getting scared if in the middle of the night I'm getting these alarms. especially if I'm traveling and I'm not with them, they don't know what to do.
Yep.
And so I think it's also important to remember that it's not just a mental burden for the person with diabetes, but also the whole family and support system.
Yep. Especially you text them and you're like, "Are you alive?" And
Yeah.
you hear from them in a reasonable amount of time, and then they may reply like, "Oh, it's a compression loan." You're like, "Okay, well, I'm
That
glad you're
literally
alive."
happened this morning with me and Tiara. Tiara texted me, "Are you okay?" And I texted back 3 hours later saying that was a compression low. I don't know what she was thinking for those 3 hours, but
Like,
um,
girl, alive.
A compression low is when like you're sleeping on the arm or
yeah, you
something that
sleep
has
on
the
the sensor. Yeah.
monitor,
Yeah.
and then it just says like, oh, well, now your blood sugar is basically having you die.
Yeah,
So it's
it's a fake
very
low.
scary when that happens. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also feel like I have Tiara and we have one other friend and we are all monitoring each other, but I feel the stress of if I ask like a family member or like a significant other to be on my Dexcom like to watch it, I feel stressed because it's like I worry that they will freak out, like, and I feel like other people with diabetes understand, like, and it's not that big of a burden, like diminishing returns in terms of you already have to manage your own. So looking at someone else's is not
Yeah.
that much of more of a burden. But to ask someone who doesn't have diabetes can sometimes feel stressful and be like you kind of have to like help them through how to react, like through to
Right.
the high, to the low. And so yeah, so those people we're really grateful for them.
And and
um
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
also like the opposite is true too. Like if they don't know much about diabetes and they see your blood sugar is up, and they may be like, "Are you okay? Are you all
oh
right?"
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, "Oh, like, yeah, okay, I ate this thing and it was delicious. I'm fine, thank you."
Yeah, I know.
So it's
A
just
Yeah,
little bit
like,
I'm just
thirsty, I
have a bit of a
guess.
headache. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and I feel like I really was resonating with what you were saying earlier, Joshan, with like you feel like the need to be on all the time, and I feel like this is something that I've talked about a lot with my experience of having diabetes as well, where it's like you feel like almost as if I have to be anxious. Like it's not like I'm just anxious like recreationally. Like I have to be anxious or like be an anxious person in order to like manage this. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, either I turn it on, it's like 0 or 100. Like either I turn it on or turn it off completely. So it's like sometimes you really can't choose. Like that's just how your brain works and you have to accept it. Like on that note, like
Yeah.
the aside from the mental exhaustion of having to remember and calculate all these things all the time, it's also has like a physiological effect on your health where if you're going low, maybe you get a little bit irritable. If you're high, you definitely also get irritable and like you just fluctuations. Like if you like went up and down like 3 times that day, like you're not feeling well, you might take it out on someone close to you.
yeah.
It's like these are
You're
parts that
wiped and physically. Yeah.
yeah, it's like that these parts are not as much talked about, but like it makes you sometimes more difficult and like the people around you have to like accept that that's part of diabetes too. And like
Yep.
mental health struggles are literally definitively part of the physical condition as well. There's some people also in the Q&A who mentioned Beth Silvers has been living with type 1 for over 61 years. Finds that calling it a condition instead of an illness helps her thrive with diabetes. And normal is nothing but a setting on your dryer. That's I like that. Um, um, Erin mentioned, Erin is my colleague. Thank you for not talking about not talking about being perfect. The online community feels so competitive, and I don't feel like I belong because I'm not like that. And we have to be gentle with each other.
Mm,
People are competitive for no
yeah.
reason. Like
I, I I'll say like, what's a lot was like, especially with social media and you see people posting their numbers, you just don't know the story behind that. Some people may post things just to say, "Hey, I'm at a perfect 100," but they can be all, all over the place any other day. So I think, you have to use the online community for support wherever you can, but also remember that, it's still your journey and there's nothing to be ashamed about where you are in this moment.
yeah. I also wanted to mention there was someone who asked, did any of you contract a viral infection, such as a flu, within months of being diagnosed? Um, this is actually like, oh, you didn't? This is actually like a normal part of diagnosis to my knowledge. Like I and a lot of people I know, I'm like surprised to hear that you guys haven't. Maybe I don't know enough about this topic, but me and a lot of
It's very
people,
possible, but I get sick all the time, so
Oh, okay.
I have no
I've
idea. Yeah.
I've heard, we can verify this with a Google search, but I've heard that the trigger for the immune system to like actually the onset of diabetes comes with a cold. And so that's part of why during COVID a lot of people were getting type 1 diabetes because like everyone was getting COVID at the same time. And then like people who like had the dormant type 1 diabetes, like it like got onset at that time. And then I also got very extremely sick and that onset my diabetes. So maybe
Mm.
not everyone, but it is a thing. Um, okay. Oh, someone in the
Yeah.
comments also got diagnosed after COVID.
Oh, wow.
The exciting part for me was that I had pancreatitis
Oh my
when I
God.
was younger, and
Oh,
so people, my endocrinologist, often think that's linked to me getting diabetes. They have no
Oh,
idea why a 5-year-old had pancreatitis, but
oh wow.
I did. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, we still have more questions and it's 10:30. Feel free to drop off, but I'll just keep asking them because I think this is an important topic. So people with diabetes are constantly trying to find the right balance between self-discipline and giving yourself grace. I mean, everyone struggles with this, but especially when it comes to diabetes, too much self-discipline can definitely be harmful to your mental health. And we've been talking about this already on this call. Um, and this can ironically land you in burnout where now you lack the motivation and your health is in danger. So how do you strike the right balance here and what helps you?
I think that the best way to find balance is to make sure that you're still able to get through parts of life that you enjoy. And
yeah.
so if you aren't giving yourself time to still enjoy life, then you'll be consumed by the diabetes care.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you don't take care of your diabetes, it'll impact the parts of your life you enjoy as well, be it through lows or highs or just um, even more serious medical ailments that can come with long-term highs. And so I think that the best way to find balance is to make sure that you're still doing what makes you feel like yourself.
Yeah.
Um, and just know that you'll always have to have a part of you that's taking care of the diabetes to be your pancreas, basically. Um, but to still make time to be Joshan or to be TR or to be Amanda.
Yep. Yep. I agree with that. And I think it goes back to um really reflecting on your relationship with perfectionism. I think if anything, you want to establish good habits that will keep you consistent most of the time, but you don't need to feel the need to be perfect all of the time. It's not all or nothing. And I think like sometimes having an all or nothing mindset can reinforce burnout. And just like what Joshan, as Joshan said, like you have to find time to really tap into the thing that makes you you. And I also think it's okay to take a break from some aspects of managing diabetes. So like if you realize that you're, burnt out on like the grind of like having a CGM on you and like you're kind of burnt out on the data, because sometimes I think sometimes we can be the data can overwhelm us at some point, or if you're over wearing a pump for a little bit, you can, go back to BGMs and injections just to kind of, take diabetes like out of your mind a little bit, but you have to figure out like what will work best for you in that moment too. But also make sure, as also Joshin said, like that you're still taking care of yourself, because you don't want to get to a point where you're not managing it really well and then you start having some health complications. But if anything, you just want to be trending in the right direction, and being more
Yeah.
consistent with that, but you don't need to be perfect.
One last thing I want to add on burnout. So it happens. Burnout happens to diabetics all the time. And I think a good way to handle periods of burnout is to rely on that support system a little bit more. So sometimes, I don't want to fill up my next cartridge of insulin. And so I'll have my girlfriend do it for me. Because, just that small little break of not having to spend 5-10 minutes it takes to reload my pump, it means a lot more to me than it does to her to spend those 10 minutes. Or
Mhm.
maybe I don't want to be the one tracking my blood sugar during an important event. I'll just tell my mom, hey, when I'm, this was at my brother's wedding. During the wedding, can you just like have one of the wedding planners check my blood sugar a few times to make sure that I'm okay, so that
Mhm.
I don't need to deal with it right now. And they did that. So I think it's just important to allow burnout to happen. And when it does happen, to have a plan in place to make sure that you're still okay.
Yeah. And also that can apply to other aspects of management as well. Like if it's around if it's about food, you can ask someone like, hey, would you mind picking me up some groceries? Or if you feel comfortable, have someone pick up a prescription for you. If mail order is an option as well. If you're someone that's like really if you're in like this rut when it comes to like exercise, ask a friend to help you switch it up, like maybe just going for a walk can help. Leaning on, as Joshan said, like leaning on your friends and family can really help as well, and asking them to help out even with like the little things that will make your life a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I feel like people with diabetes sometimes are reluctant to put that burden on the people close to them,
Absolutely.
because like not only because you feel bad, but also because it just requires so much explaining. And sometimes, like for me personally, I'm so tired of explaining anything. Like I just don't want to. It's easier to just not say anything, so I just don't.
Yeah.
But it's an important part, and that's something I need to work on as well. And like I feel like talking to the people closest to you is a huge part of helping with your own diagnosis, and your own daily management.
And oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna say, and like for the people that you trust, you can just tell them that I'm burnt out on diabetes. Sometimes, like even just admitting that, because I think sometimes we may feel reluctant to admit to ourselves that we're burnt out and that we're struggling. But sometimes, like one, admitting it to ourselves is the first step, but then telling someone else makes it real. And then telling someone, I need help, I'm struggling. That does so much just to relieve like the initial
Yeah,
anxiety.
it also reminds that person that you are a person you haven't had diabetes your whole life. Like they feel like I feel like it's so easy for people without diabetes to look at people with diabetes and be like, oh, this is their thing. Like they've had this their whole life. But it's like I'm burnt out on diabetes reminds them like, oh, that person also is overwhelmed by this almost like force that has like affected their life. And it's like I'm also just like you, but I deal with diabetes. So it's like it kind of humanizes you to that person as well. Like I'm burnt out by this. It's not just my thing. Like it's very difficult. I also personally I've struggled. I think someone in the comments mentioned like disordered eating. I personally have a history of eating disorders, and what has helped me, I think, is my boyfriend in the past has when I look at nutrition facts, it's very triggering for me, and that's a hard thing to manage as a person with diabetes because I have to look
Yeah.
at nutrition facts. Is I tell him to just tell me the carbs, and I just don't look at any of it, and I just tell me how much carbs, what's the serving, because I don't want to look at the calories, I don't want to look at anything like that. That's really helpful. If you can just have someone, it doesn't have to be, you can be honest with just anyone you're eating with in that moment. Like, can you just tell me this? Like,
Yeah.
it's very low level request. Um,
It's,
Joshin,
it's
you,
super helpful. Super
yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to speed through these questions because I want to be mindful of everyone's time. But Joshin, you recently went back to school to pursue a career as a licensed clinical professional counselor specializing in diabetes. What made you choose that path, and what's your goal in the field of clinical care?
Yeah. So I had a therapist that also has type 1 diabetes. And I've had therapists that, didn't have type 1 diabetes. And I realized after starting to meet with that therapist that has diabetes, just how beneficial it was for me to have someone that I could relate with. Um, it was really like it felt validating. It felt like she understood things that no one else I've ever spoken to could actually understand. And that helped me tremendously. That helped me so, so much. And I was a software engineer for uh, like 3 years out of college, and throughout college I studied computer science, and I liked it. I liked it a lot, but I didn't feel like I was helping people in the way that I wanted to. And I know how much diabetes can take a toll on someone's mental health, and I just wanted the opportunity to be able to help others the way that my therapist helped me.
That's amazing. I'm really interested in talking to a therapist who has diabetes. I feel like that's such a rare experience to have.
Yeah.
That
haven't experienced that yet. I
yeah,
too.
and maybe
The
once you
therapist
become
didn't
a
even
therapist.
advertise that they were like a diabetes therapist. My previous therapist just knew as of this person as a friend and knew that they had diabetes.
Oh wow,
And this was like,
Wow.
you should go talk to this
that's
person.
very serendipitous. Yeah, once you become a therapist, you can help
Yeah.
all of us, right? You can do sessions for everyone in
Yeah,
DPAC.
yeah.
um,
I saw someone in the Q&A mention that they are an LCPC as well, and I have type 1 diabetes. So I'm glad that more people are getting into the field.
yeah, that's really I'm really glad that that field is expanding as well. So quickly, let's talk about stigma, even though it's a huge topic. Let's blow through it. Stigma associated with diabetes. Have either of you experienced this firsthand? And if so, how do you deal with that?
I mean,
Yes.
yeah. Like, yeah, I think when I was misdiagnosed with type 2 diabetes, like I didn't get much support from my provider. Like I didn't know what devices were out there. I didn't see like an insulin pump until maybe over a year into my diagnosis, and that's because I was around people who had type 1 diabetes. Um when I got reclassified as someone with type 1 diabetes, it's like the whole world opened up. Like I all of a sudden I'm getting all this compassion from people about, oh, it wasn't your fault. Like this is just this happens. And the whole time I'm thinking like I haven't changed as a person. I'm still checking my blood sugar every day. I'm still taking insulin. So what's really different other than like the fact that we just changed the 2 to a 1? Like I mean, I still have diabetes at the end of the day, And then also at that time, like I'm being prescribed like rapid acting insulin. I get put on a CGM, and that's all these things that weren't available to me or even told to me when I, was being managed as someone with type 2 diabetes. And I saw someone in the Q&A bring up about diabetes support groups that can be really cool to people with type 2 diabetes. That is absolutely true. I've been in some of those support groups early on in my diagnosis, and I remember asking like questions about carbs and stuff like that, and people being like, no carbs, keto only, carbs are evil. And that's someone who was, studying nutrition and wanted to just get some ideas and recipes from folks. Like it felt like it felt like I was being shamed for wanting to eat like real food or food that I would enjoy. So all of that is very stigmatizing. And that does stay with you, and it does impact your like your relationship with food and the relationship with your body, and then also with other people. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a high comorbidity of people with diabetes having eating disorders for a reason. And it's because there's so much stigma about what you should and shouldn't eat. I also did, the no carbs life, keto only for a bit after being diagnosed. Um, and I ended up getting stomach ulcers and had to be hospitalized a few times. Like it's just, you know, it's important to have the actual facts out there and not just these stigmas we have from pop culture of like, oh, you're a diabetic. That means all you've been doing is, going to ice cream shops and candy stores your whole life. And you can never have any carbs again. That's not true. And I think it's also something that we as a community need to work on about type 1s just having this like air of superiority to type 2s and like having just a lot of anger towards them. As someone who was once diagnosed as type 2 and then changed to type 1 and then changed to both. It's been really interesting seeing the treatment I've gotten from people
Mhm.
at different stages of diagnosis, similar to UTR. And I think that, we're all in this together and we have to really work on that.
I was talking to a friend recently. We were talking about that the stigmas between type 1 and type 2, just like in the community. And like one thing that we both noticed is just like there's when we talk to our other type 1 friends or have seen other people in the type 1 community, we're like, why do you feel like you have to separate yourself out from people with type 2 diabetes? Like there is, it almost
Yeah.
feels like like you're saying, like, oh, I have diabetes, but not that kind of diabetes. And I'm like, it's still diabetes. Like, yes, how you develop it is different, but at the end of the day, we're all trying to manage our glucose levels and prevent, health complications in the future. We're all trying to live with this day in and day out. We all want the best devices in healthcare. Well, why do you feel like there's this need to kind of separate yourself out from millions of other people who also didn't have a choice in developing this as well? This is a topic that we can go on all day, and I know we don't have time, Amanda, but maybe next time, if you want to have a stigma one, I will
No,
definitely be back for that.
yeah, no, that's a good idea,
Yeah.
actually. This is a perfect duo for that topic, honestly. As someone who has type 1 and like obviously has talked about it with and had been asked type 1 or type 2 what kind of diabetes you have, I've also witnessed a lot of people just casually say derogatory comments about type 2 after I say I'm type 1, like
Mhm.
just like, oh, like, yeah, like saying very offensive things. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of type 1s, kind of keep their mouths shut in that moment because they're like, oh, like they're not saying the derogatory comment about me, but it's like that's our job too. That's our
And
job to say, that is also either not true, not appropriate, all the above. Like,
And also, which is, since this is about mental health, we want to be people who are safe for other people, right? If you're
yeah,
someone with type 1 diabetes and saying that about type 2 diabetes, you likely have someone in your family who has type 2 but isn't coming to you to talk about it because they've heard the things that you've said.
yeah,
Which means that you're one less person, or one fewer person who they can't turn to if they are feeling burnt out, because they don't want to hear some of the comments that you may have, or that you may have about people who have type 2 diabetes.
yeah. The only thing that these comments do is make it harder for people with type 2 to manage their conditions because, yeah, like
Yeah.
creating a cycle of stigma.
Something that I've really worked to correct over the last few years, but was very guilty of, I would say probably like 2020 to 2022. Um, Anytime I saw a new medical provider, I would instantly be like, I have type 1. Like, I would just like, when I said I have diabetes, I would like say type 1 before they even had a chance to ask 1 or 2,
Yep.
because I didn't want them to think, oh, I have type 2, and therefore I'm a terrible person. And now I'm doing better about it, but it's because there's just an internalized shame, and
Yeah.
it's something that a lot of work needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, it's not even, I'm sure you at that time didn't think like, oh, type 2, worse than type 1. Like you fully knew what the stigma was, but you just
Yeah,
were appealing to the other people's stigma,
Yeah.
which is like, it's a very
exactly.
natural thing to do, but like it's something that
and
we
and the,
to
and the
work on.
temptation the temptation is there is to not feel othered, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, because again, like with type 1 diabetes, like again, you're not going to have a ton of people. Well, I've met some folks who have gone through this, but like generally it's not like, oh, did you eat too much of this, did you eat too many donuts or whatever, whereas like with type 2, it's like, well, okay, but what did you do? like what choices did you make? Aren't you, don't you know that you're a little overweight? Don't you know you probably shouldn't have been eating that? And it's just like, okay, like how is this helpful or productive? And you wouldn't say that to someone else, so to someone with type 1 diabetes, likely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. This is a topic we should definitely get back to. I think this is a lot to be explored here. Just last question. What do you see as the role of diabetes advocacy, tying it back, in the conversation about mental health?
I think it gives you a few things. One, it gives you a sense of uh, purpose and meaning in the diagnosis. Two, it gives you a community of other uh, people with diabetes that you can speak with, which is very, very helpful mental health wise. And then three, um, I think that it also gives a place for the family members that you and the support system around you to also join you in the fight. Because they can not, you don't have to have diabetes to be someone that advocates for someone with diabetes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's about, I think the role of diabetes advocacy, I mean, like you just said, it's not just about us who are living with it, it's people who are impacted by it. And then I think that anyone can be a diabetes advocate, because you likely know someone who has it, or you will have it yourself. And you may have to take care of someone who has it. Um, I think that uh diabetes advocacy provides people a voice, even if you're just, doing panels like this, or if you're going, you know, on the hill to advocate for other people. Um, there's room to kind of share your experiences. I think advocacy is a great place for storytelling and making people feel less alone and opening up people's minds to to other people's experiences too. Even if you have diabetes yourself, you can still learn from other people who are living with it. I think if you've, you know, seen how or heard from advocates internationally, you'll see how they manage it as well and how they care for other people too. Um, and I think that that diabetes advocacy provides just community overall. Like I think, you know, we've talked a lot about mental health and how it can impact us, you know, negatively, but I think that community support, it can help you in the opposite direction. Like I've met some amazing people, you know, like you, Amanda, like that have helped me feel um normal, like that make me feel seen as a human being who just happens to have diabetes. And I think advocacy can help a lot with that. So I think what I want people to know is that advocacy, you know, you can just start. You can join like DPAC or another group and just start sharing your story to start getting involved.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for saying that. I feel so bad because we're so over, but I really think that's a good way to wrap it
It's an
up.
important conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is. And I think we do, and Joshan, I'm sure as a professional therapist yourself, you know,
I'm not one yet.
um, that volunteer work is something that really helps people's mental health. And
Yeah.
at diagnosis, people around you say, what can I do? And they really mean it. And this is a way to help that's super easy, you know, just, you know, I mean, in regard to like DPAC, it's just as easy as signing up, but there's so many volunteer organizations with diabetes, and we're not, you know, we're not mutually exclusive. There's so many ways to become involved in advocacy and in diabetes. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this
Thanks
call.
for having us.
It's
Thank you so
20
much for
minutes
putting us
over.
on, Amanda.
Great.
And thank you everyone who joined to listen in today.
Yeah, thank you everyone. I hope you have a great day. This will be streaming on Facebook and YouTube.
All
Thank you,
right.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.